All right, here we are. Good morning, Shawn.
Good morning, Jamaica. How are you?
I am doing well. Of course, life wouldn't be good if there wasn't, there we go, some type of Facebook issues. We've got it now. All right, side by side, live on Facebook. Here we are. It is Thursday, July 9th. We are in the wonderful city of Schenectady. Both of us are here in Schenectady, our hometown. But again, good morning, co-founder Shawn Young.
Good morning, co-founder Jamaica Miles.
And welcome to those that are watching us live on Facebook. Shawn and I are the co-founders of All of Us Community Action Group. And gonna just have a conversation this morning. I guess I'm the reporter and you're the interviewee today, Shawn. We have gone through a lot in the greater capital region in the preceding weeks and months. Most recently, this past Monday, there was video footage of someone who was assaulted by police in Schenectady. His father actually got it on film. But even before that happened, All of Us Community Action Group, as well as other groups and organizations across the Greater Capital District, have really been drawing attention to and lifting up the fact that we still live in a police state. The systemic and structural racism and biases that exist in our justice system, from policing to district attorney prosecution to the amount of time that individuals are sentenced and even whether or not they ever come home. We've talked time and time again about how these systems and structures happen to impact and influence the individuals working inside this system. So let's talk a little bit today about how that happened regarding this past Monday. There was the video that the father had released and shared online. And then yesterday, the police finally released the body cam footage from Officer Pommer, Pommer, as well as the other officers that arrived on the scene afterwards. Should we go ahead and show that video now and then have a discussion about it?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's see if that's actually going to work. And it might not, because that's the type of thing that happens in my life. Oh, here it is. And this is the video that's being shared from the Daily Gazette's page that had showed the video.
Mm-hmm.
That in regards to a male. Not the video.
Yes, okay. Let me talk to you, okay? We have it on camera. They don't want to press charges right now.
I don't care what they want to do because I don't know what you're talking about. So bring that camera and show it to me. Okay?
Hey, Jamaica.
Hey, Terrell, put your hands behind your back. 35 front man car. Put your hands behind your back. 35 pursuit. Hands now. Behind your back.
Yo,
hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
Yo, why
put
you
your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back right now. Stay back. Stay back. Stay back. Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back. Please.
Bring the evidence.
Put your hands behind your back.
Bring the evidence to me. Bring the evidence and show it to me.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your fucking back. Ow!
Go ahead, then.
Back up! Back up!
Bring that in that short.
Put your hands behind your back.
Bring
Put
it
your back.
What I did? I didn't do nothing.
Put your hands behind your back.
I
Get
didn't
back
do nothing.
inside now. Get back inside.
I didn't
Get
do
back.
nothing.
Back up.
Yo, you bring
Back
it.
up.
Bring you up.
Back up.
You bring you in. Bring you up. What did he do you?
Back up. Back up. Put your hand behind your back. Put your hand behind your back. No. Back up.
What I did?
Back up.
What I did?
Put your hand behind your back.
What I did?
Back up. Back up. Back up. Back up.
My head.
He's under arrest.
What I did?
Back up. Fucking back. Behind your fucking back. Put your hand behind your fucking back. Back up. Get back. I'm in the backyard. I'm in the backyard. Backyard. Get back. Get back. Put your hands behind your come over. So we couldn't get you. I know. Get him up. Stand up, asshole. No, I'm good. Just put in this one. Somebody unlock this car?
Yeah, I got it. We got no Ford out. No, it's not a-
Wait, put it back.
Get him out of here. Just get him out of here, guys. Get him in. Just go through him. Get him out of here. Good?
Yeah, I'm done. All right. Boys, yeah, I ditched my radio.
I said
Yes. Let me.
So I'm just gonna take a breath. And to those that are watching on Facebook that are seeing that, please take a breath also. So that is the body cam footage and all of the different angles from not just the original officer, Officer Palmer, who was originally on the scene, but the other officers who all showed up. And it shows their interactions, as well as we have the audio, the language that was used during the interaction with the person who was accused of slashing tires, and with them saying that the person that accused them doesn't want to press charges. What is your reaction to that video, Shawn?
Well, so clearly it is, it's disturbing, and I just want, folks to understand, or to think about how we even got to this point. We're talking about an accusation of slash tires. ending with that kind of arrest, that kind of assault in the backyard, that kind of pain, suffering you hear the family. It's a very, very, very traumatic experience that did not have to happen. It did not have to happen. If you watch the first video, the officer is told by the accuser that he doesn't want an arrest in this case. He just simply wants the individual to know, Mr. Gendapsar, to know that he should pay for the damages, that there's a video and etc. And that if he doesn't, then they would, act accordingly after the fact. I wanted you to, I was hoping that you could kind of go back to the very beginning of the interaction between the officer and Mr. Gendapsar, because it's in that point that I think there's some significant things happening. For instance, you have to ask yourself, if the officer already knew that from the accuser that he didn't want an arrest at the time, he was just simply to relay to the Mr. Gendapsar that there was video evidence and that he needed to pay for the damages, or there would be some arrest moving down the line, or something else would happen down the line. Why did the officer react the way he did? It begs the question, what was going on in his mind? And it seems, I think, clear to anyone watching the video that it was based on Mr. Gendapsar's reaction to him. So, at the time, the officer hadn't reviewed any tape. He's got an accusation against Mr. Gendapsar, but he acts as if he does know for sure that he did this. He's already proven guilty in his mind's eye. And I think Mr. Gendapsar's reaction to him is what caused the arrest to happen, right? It was him not just saying, hey, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Well, you see, so let's think about this for a second. This officer, several years on the force, supposedly trained to deal with these type of interactions. Instead of de-escalating it and just doing what he was asked to do with the accuser, he kind of escalates it in his mannerisms and the way he spoke to Mr. Gendapsar. From that point forward, I mean, all of it could have been avoided just in that conversation. What was wrong with simply saying, listen, this is what happened. This is what we have. There's a report being filed. If you don't pay, he's going to press charges. The accuser is going to press charges, and then leaving and walking away. No, right?
Yeah. And we talk about all of the different parts within the justice system that is not just for all. The training that police receive, we've talked about it at a number of our events. They are not trained in social services. They are not trained in mental health issues. They are not trained in community relations. They are taught violent tactical actions for when they show up on a scene. Mm-hmm. The basis of their presence, and what I think we saw on Monday was, we are here to protect property, not people. So if we can switch gears a little bit and talk more about that interaction, and I really can't get over the language, right? It wasn't just physically how they treated him, but also how they spoke to him, and the words that they used. Do you think that if either of us was talking to each other and had a dispute, that it would be found to be acceptable to call someone outside their name or use that type of language? Does that speak at all to the atmosphere of policing that we have, not just in Schenectady, but across the state?
I mean, I think you're right. Discourse is important. How we think about a thing kind of, determines how we speak about a thing. How we speak about the thing determines how we act upon that thing, right? If you see the way in which the way that situation escalated so quickly, and to the point where at the point of arrest where they have the cuffs and they're walking him out, and we don't know if he's fully conscious, whatever the case may be, and he begins to stumble and fall over. There's no real care and concern of whether or not he has a medical issue. It's just, simply get the hell up and let's go, right? I want to talk a little bit about, besides just the language, let's talk about, the arrest itself, the physical confrontation and what was going on, and the officer screaming for him to put his hands behind his back while he's kind of laid out on the ground with his knee clearly up against his shoulder, across his neck, to the side of his head, right? Like that seems pretty clear. I don't know Who could determine that it was like anything differently? It would have to be, I think, subjective, based on, you know, what your feelings are about officers, what your feelings are about, you know, kind of the things that we talk about. I've seen some conversations that to me just don't make a whole lot of sense, but I won't get into that. I won't even uplift all of that. I would just simply say, if you see this, you see him prone on the ground and the officer screaming for him to put his hands behind his back. My question is how? And in what physical way do you're actually able to do that? Like, how are you able to do that when you're in the position that he is on the ground on his back?
He was
sideways. Yeah. How do you throw your hands behind your back?
The officer was pushing his arm towards his chest,
Yeah.
but he's telling him to put his arm behind his back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
while holding his head to the ground, and I saw the same thing you did, that I don't know how you could say his knee was not on his head and his neck in the position of the camera. From the angle of the officer, you can see that it's fully covered. And you and I saw him that same day, and the gash on his head and the raw, like the skin peeled from his knees. Mm-hmm. For someone who was accused of slashing a tire, and the accuser didn't even want to press charges. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of that's the problem with these interactions. Those are the things that's the things that we're talking about when we're out here in these streets talking about the changes that need to be made in the policing of our communities. But I just want to get back to like some of what we actually saw, because I want to, like, for the folks that are like tuning in, if you watch the entire video and you see Mr. Gander-Bassar prone out on the ground, I want to ask you, in thinking about the way, do you see him significantly struggling against the officer? Do you see him flailing or trying to swing or grab at the officer? What you're seeing is someone struggling on the ground in some kind of pain. And you're seeing an officer who, I mean, think about the position that he's in. At several points in the video, you see the officer has one hand on both of his arms. Right? There isn't any significant struggle going on to the point that you can hold this man's arm with just one hand. And then that's when he begins to swing and swing and swing and swing and hurt him. And you can hear the pain and anguish coming from Mr. Gander-Bassar. Like,
if I was being restrained and hit repeatedly and experiencing physical pain, I can't imagine that my reaction, my instinct would be to let that persist.
Yeah.
That I would be like, oh, well, you know, I'm just gonna lay here because I'm being hit, and so I should accept this pain, as opposed to our natural instincts to protect ourselves. Yeah.
I mean, all of that said, I'm just saying, look at why we're here. We're talking about slashing tires. And I'm not, first of all, you know, no one has a right to destroy something that's yours. I get that. I don't think anyone would believe anything differently. No one has the right to do that. And there should be accountability when things like that happen. I think the point we're trying to make is, why are we using this kind of tactics to address that kind of matter, right? What's the point? Especially when the accuser in this circumstance has said he did not want an arrest. He wanted the officer to go and talk with him and tell them that the report is being filed. There is a video. If you don't pay up at some point, there's going to be other ramifications, period. That was all that was supposed to happen that day. But I think that what's significant is that in that interaction tells us a lot about the systems and structures that we're fighting against. So the systems and structures we're fighting against support this idea that if you're not, as an officer, given that kind of due or proper respect, so to speak, if that's what they're actually looking for, then all cards are off the table now. Now, because I have the authority to do these things to you, I can now do them because you didn't somehow acquiesce to or behave in the way that I wanted. He wasn't physically threatening. He didn't say like, "Hey, I'm gonna do this," or he didn't curse him. but you see the escalation of emotions in the officer, and in response to what he's hearing from Mr. Gander-Bassard, and then he decides, hey, I'm gonna arrest you now. I'm wondering, like, that's the problem. Go ahead. I said something.
No, there's definitely there's a couple burning desires. One being, so what? He turned and ran. The officer, like, now has physically seen him. He's on his property. He knows where he lives. He every single officer every day has a choice about the decisions they make. And when he decided, okay, because you're being a smartass, and I'm making an inference here, because you're being a smartass, I'm gonna arrest you, even though I just got done telling you this person doesn't want to press charges. So that's my first choice. And then when I say I'm gonna arrest you, and you're like, nah, you ain't arrested me today, you decide it is worth your time, effort, energy to chase the person instead of coming back later, knocking on the door, calling it in, saying, hey, listen, this is the situation. This is what happened. Get the DA to file a bench warrant. Like, there were options. He didn't have to pursue him. This wasn't an accusation, because again, an accusation, he was not judge, jury, and executioner. This was an accusation about damage to property. This was not even an accusation of harm to people. And then once you get to the physical interaction, fucking stay still. And when he's walking and he's stumbling, get up, you asshole. Never a question about his physical safety, but the officers, after they got him into the car, were worried about Officer Palmer. Are you okay? Did Officer Palmer have a big gash in his head, or was he bleeding from his knees? But they were asking if he was okay. His humanity was still intact after he was cussing and they're calling him all kinds of names. That's the first burning desire that is kind of with me right now. The second is, all of us had put out 13 demands to be able to change the police brutality, the state-sanctioned violence, and the abuse of power that we have seen time and time again. And funny enough, some of our demands actually would have addressed this issue. I'm looking at them right now. One of them being that number 11 is require all force be reported with racial data captured for both the law enforcement officer or corrections officer, because it's not just about the cops, and the injured party, and reviewed by a civilian review board with full access to unredacted files and evidence, and the power to submit to the Attorney General for further review, investigation, and potential charges against the officer, or whether it's police or corrections. And then also we talk about demilitarize and defund the police, and reallocating funds to community-based restorative groups for conflict resolution and restorative practices and other community-based services and solutions, which brings us back to your point of officers are not trained in those ways. And how could we better in our community have conflict resolution? There is a conflict between neighbors, right? One neighbor says another neighbor slashed their tires. Could there not be a different system to address that, which we proposed in several of our 13 demands that the mayor has refused to address, and the police chief also says is not taking a look at for any reason? Response to that, Shawn Young.
Well, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I think that this kind of instinct to fall back on old ways of doing things has to end. The resistance to even coming to the table and having conversations about what our society should be looking like moving forward is because we're so used to living in the society that we have. A lot of responses I've seen to the video was like, he got what he deserved. Oh, he shouldn't have did this. And hey, just listen to the police and you'll be okay, buddy. Don't commit crimes. Then this is all without even knowing whether or not he actually committed a crime or not. Just assuming that someone is guilty based on no evidence but the word of somebody else. We're supposed to live in a society where we are innocent before proven guilty, before a court of law, jury, our peers, etc. But yet that largely does not happen, especially not in Black and brown or impoverished communities, right? And I tell you, for those folks listening and watching and like thinking about, okay, well, what other thing could happen? That's up to us to decide as a community. We have that power to do so. These interactions, we do not need folks showing up with guns and shields and militarized vehicles or whatever the case may be, long guns, rifles, to handle slashing tires, right? To handle property, that kind of property damage. Think about what that's saying. Think about what that is. Think about the way in which things escalate really, really quickly based on the fact that someone has a weapon and has the authority to use it on someone. Why are we calling officers based on that type of thing? We need to have more community kind of involvement in what happens in our neighborhoods, and we need not be scared to do that. We need not always have to rely on calling the cops in these type of situations. Like, listen, in the video, in the entirety of it, you hear kind of some stories going on. The accuser's like, hey, get Mr. Gandaprasad's tires were slashed not too long ago, right? And he thinks that he might have done that, slashed his tires in response to that. He claims that there's video evidence of it. Like, okay, but this is property damage, and there's other ways in which we can handle and deal with it. And I think that this kind of highlights how problematic the relationship is between the police department and the community.
So there's a number of people had commented on Facebook. Thank you to those that are watching right now. Someone said, please remind Mr. Palmer and Mr. Clifford that whether the breathing of an alleged human being is or is not compromised is totally irrelevant. Knees to necks are now illegal. After watching that video, I don't think you should put your knee on any part of the body. I don't think that we should be looking for technicalities, which is how I'm feeling right now. There is a technicality of, oh, it was actually his head. And so it's not actually illegal and therefore should be acceptable.
Well, that's all that's about, right? That claim is more about saying, hey, I know these things are illegal. I said we're not going to do them. So that's not that. So I don't care what you're seeing on video. I'm telling you that's only on his head and on his neck. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you're watching the video, how you could even make that determination, I think goes to like, what you're actually doing, right? It's disingenuous for anyone paying attention.
And so we're gonna wrap this up. We've been on for, I don't know, almost a half hour now. Our morning. Early in the morning. This is our commitment. This is our dedication. We showed up on that day. Our team members put out the call. Thank you again to Bam Bambino, to Legacy Casanova, to Julian, to Kenny, there are just too many names of the number of individuals that showed up and showed out to support this family, to make sure that they had support in their time of trauma, because that's what happened. They were traumatized by Schenectady Police Department. And we wanted to ensure that not only we found justice, but that family can find a way to be whole again. And thank you to the safety team and the medic team that offered their services to that family and continue to do so. So if anyone from that family or that community are watching right now, please know those services are still available. Also know that there is no justice and there will be no peace. And we will still show up on Monday. The information is on our Facebook page. We've put the call to action for individuals to reach out to 40 people they know to invite them to show up in downtown Schenectady on Monday. Tonight, Thursday, we will have a community call to action where we will reach out to our friends and family and coworkers and say, hey, this is what's happening in the Capital District. come and be a part of it and ensure that we have justice in our communities, because right now we don't. We've got a long battle in front of us, my friends, my comrades. I appreciate that I am in this battle with co-founder Shawn Young, as well as so many other amazing Black leaders and people of color who have been standing on the front lines and putting themselves out there for all of us, as well as the allies and accomplices who are not people of color, who show up every single day supporting this work, either financially or with their time or with donations. There's a reason we're called All of Us. And it is because it will take all of us to ensure that we have the world that we all deserve, the world that we envision, one where all of us can walk freely and truly have freedom. We'll be sure to be back with you soon. Any closing remarks, Shawn, before we end this wonderful morning debrief?
Yes. But you covered a lot. You spoke to the people that I would love to speak to. But I got a message for Chief Clifford and the police department. Please be as quick with releasing videos in the future. You released this video relatively quickly, based on what you decided was some clear kind of factual evidence that there's nothing to see here. Unfortunately, that's not true. But be just as quick in other instances where we have these interactions with police in the community, because it's going to happen again. And if you're quick with it now, be quick later.
Yeah, because there was actually another video from the day before, Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
with an interaction with a young Black man that I'm waiting to hear what happened with that as well. So be safe, everyone. COVID is still real. Wear your mask, keep safe distancing as much as possible. And actually also follow Schenectady County for testing sites. And we will be back with you soon. Everyone, have a great day, and I'll see you soon.